All right. So the second week here, things are starting to get going. Do not worry about the whole textbook homework situation. There's always a struggle for people to get the textbook the first couple weeks, and there's also an alignment issue between the assigned questions and the ones listed in the book because I allow various editions to be used. So sometimes they change the questions. I'll be putting out a master question, kind of guide that will serve as the template for you all to turn in your homework questions when we get closer to the first exam, the midterm. So that'll all be good. Not too much else going on. One thing I did, my screw up was I did not include the comment video. So I kind of explained the process on the comment video, but then I forgot to post it. So this week you'll have two. It'll take you all of about, if you spend more than 10 minutes on it, you're overdoing it. All you need to do is watch the two little videos. The last one from last week was on just simple, budgeting type stuff and or actually paying yourself first. And so anyway, it'll be very self-explanatory. So it'll just say, video for comment, and right there on that sheet, you'll write a sentence like, yeah, this was insightful, this was worthless, this was whatever, and you'll get your 5 points. You don't need a paragraph, you don't need any of that, and you'll get full credit if you put something just to acknowledge that you saw it. So, busy week around here. Obviously, we've got the holiday. I'm not sure how you all are accommodating this, but I'm just going to go ahead and post this in case some of you are working through the weekend. It's been busy around here. I've got my shoulders jacked up because I got thrown by one of my horses, and then I got kicked by another one, a little filly, little brat. She kicked me, and so I'm hobbling on. My whole left side is jacked up. That kick hurt. But I do have good news. In fact, let me show you something real quick. I've got a video from, this is one of my, I had a very sick pig. I raised some pigs on the side here. And this poor little girl, she was super, almost dead. And I nursed her back to health. I had to bring her in and raise her with my puppies. And now you can't tell her from the others. There's a bunch more pigs running around, but these are just some of them. Big old Kendra. Anyway, so ups and downs. Back to this. Okay, so planning with financial statements. So what's going to happen as you go through life, especially as you get to something like buying a house or making some major investments, you may find yourself in a position where you need to apply for credit, and you want to be able to do that. Now, when people say debt is horrible, that's a large overstatement. Credit card debt is horrible. The interest rates, you can't earn that kind of interest on your investments. So you need to manage your credit cards. You need to be what is referred to as a convenience user. Somebody who uses a credit card because, they want to get the better deals. They want to be able to rent cars. I mean, God help you. If you don't have a credit card and you try and rent a car, well, it's going to be very difficult, but it's also going to be very expensive because they're going to look at you and go, you can't even get a credit card and we're going to trust you with a car, which they may, but you're going to have to put down cash deposits or you'll have to use your whatever. It can just be a lot more work, and there's a lot of times some good deals to be had that you can't take advantage because you didn't use a credit card. Now, if you use a credit card and you pay it off within the balance statement period, you don't pay any interest on it. So you're what they call a convenience user. Now, if you're somebody who's carrying a balance, they love you. I mean, they love you twice because credit cards, as a merchant, I get charged 3%, something like that. If it's American Express, they want to dock me like 4 something. And anyway, that's why you might find some merchants not want to take some of those cards, or if they do take a credit card, it's kind of short-sighted where they say, oh, we don't take credit cards, we don't want to pay that fee. Well, truth is, you need to make sales. I don't discourage people from taking credit cards, but I was selling a lot of farm equipment type stuff, horse-related stuff, and people would ask hey, can I put this on a credit card? Which was kind of an indication that they're going to spend even more. They're feeling a little bit on the fence. They don't really want to part with their cash somehow. Spending $3,000 in cash is very painful, but throwing $5,000 on a credit card is not a problem. I'm all about that. I'll suck up the 3% and make the larger sale. So anyway, but they also, so the credit cards make a percentage on the sale, and then they also make even more on you if you're one to carry a balance. So if you carry a big balance, we're talking in the 20% range, and it's sad. That's why, some very rich people can enjoy the lifestyle they do, is because some poor sap somewhere is paying for that through exorbitant credit card rates. And it's a concept called usury, where those interest rates aren't even legal, but there's loopholes. There's certain states like Delaware, and Delaware used to be the big one. Delaware's still a big corporate state. If you go there as a person, you have virtually no rights. Corporations have incredible, very friendly to them. And now North Dakota's getting in the game, and they are where a lot of credit card companies are going, because again, they've made themselves very business friendly, very consumer non-friendly, but it's kind of their niche. They get all the companies to come to their state, bring them business, and is it North Dakota or South Dakota? Anyway, one of the Dakotas. If you look on your credit card statements, you'll see a lot of things happening out there. Anyway, so what I was talking about here on these documents is when you do need to get a loan, and obviously for a credit card, you're not going to have to present a bunch of forms. But for good credit that you want, credit that is secured, like for a home or for some sort of investment, they're going to want to know your financial status. And so the only way to know that is to, have this stuff documented. Also, it's the only way to really keep control and be knowledgeable about your own finances. And so you can, prepare these sort of documents for yourself, just for your own peace of mind. But oh, by the way, you can use them if you're trying to secure a loan for something else. And again, if you are going to apply for credit, your credit viability, your ability to pay back, is reflected in the better rate. If you've got a crummy credit score, or disorganized, or make the lender at all nervous, that's going to be reflected in a much higher rate. So you want to be organized. So anyway, personal cash flow statement. So now we're talking not so much large scale investment. We're talking day to day cash, how it's moving around, and how you're able to maintain liquidity. Remember, ability to get cash is liquidity. How you're able to pull that off. And so you keep track of what's coming in, inflows, and then outflows, all the expenses. And so, as I mentioned before, and they'll talk about in the video, one of your expenses should be some sort of set aside, maybe initially for an emergency fund, but then for investments. Because again, you want to be one of those people. You want to be one of those people that's taking advantage of what's available to you, and not be a spender, a person living paycheck to paycheck and having to make very bad deals. I mean, the truth is, it's very expensive to be poor. The poor get taken advantage of substantially, and so you don't want to be in that realm, because you'll have to make what would be exceedingly poor financial decisions, because you're in this cash crunch and you can't do anything else. So anyway, create a statement by recording your revenues, expenses over a period of time, and then you come up with the net cash flows. So easy. Net is, inflows minus cash outflows. So here's a sample thing for this woman. So not a whole lot of money, $2,500 after tax. Her expenses. Now, again, these expenses are, I don't know how you all manage your life, but, I don't know. I always, when I look at this slide, $600 for recreation, I think you might do better by itemizing that down, Now, maybe you're putting $600 a month away and then you take one big trip, go to Europe or something at the end of the year. That's not a bad way to do something. But to think that especially here in Alaska where things are quite weather dependent, depending on what you're doing, with the seasons, probably you spend a lot more in whatever particular season where you, engage in expensive outdoor recreation, hopefully. But other things, obviously the cellular, pretty easy to budget. Rent is very easy to budget. Internet, yep. Clothing, I don't know that clothing's consistent, but, maybe, what she's doing, maybe she's smarter than they're alluding to here, and that she's actually has a fund, a separate account. If that works for you, it might be a little time consuming, but again, money builds up quickly when you allocate it. If you have these different little pots, because, to think that you're going to go out and spend $100 even in a particular month, I think, people sort of splurge and then they don't spend anything for a month or two. So, but anyway, got to have something. Stage in your career path. So we talked about this a little bit with the term paper. There is an expectation that, obviously a traditional college student, their income would be not so much. Your main goal would be to maybe get through quickly so you don't incur too much in the way of student debt and you get out to where you're actually earning some better money in a career. But obviously a lot of people are working full-time when they're in college. And then this notion of retirement, a lot of people don't do it, A lot of people can't do it, unfortunately. So, yeah, I hate to say, well, it's not, I wouldn't say it's failure, but, sometimes there's medical issues or there's other issues that make people, expenses that come up that force people to continue to work. For a lot of us, it's not so much a retirement as it's a shift. My days of working for somebody else, granted, I guess I'm working for the university, but I'm not working for a soulless corporation again. So anyway, in order to do that, you have to have a certain amount built up. So you kind of have some, basic FU money where you can go and do your own thing. You aren't job locked. Again, some people get tied into benefits. My brother's like that, where he's should have retired years ago, but he keeps going because it's got good benefits. It's like, oof, better him than me. Type of job. So look, especially when you're doing the term paper, if you haven't looked, there's used to be a pretty good website. It was called Glassdoor, but I'm not sure if it's that accurate. The things change on the interwebs all the time, but there are reliable websites out there that will tell you, a veterinarian, for example, gets paid this much on average. Nurse gets paid this much, and again, the more you know about the field, the more you'll know that there's all kinds of different people in all those fields. But make sure that amount of money is, something that's, realistic, what you plan to live on. And if not, either, change careers, or if it's gonna, make you that unhappy not to make the big money, or, realize that you have to be more disciplined in terms of your finances to get ahead, or maybe a side hustle or something like that. But my daughter, for example, she was going to be a veterinarian, and she just got so disillusioned, not with the money, but just with the guy she was working for. He was just so bitter that he wasn't making as much as a doctor, and even though he'd gone to all this school, and it's like, dude, you should have done your research, you go through life just a bitter person because you did all this. And clearly you probably don't have a great love for this work. In fact, not that on the doctor's side, they've got the highest suicide rate of professions out there, at least according to the latest book I just read. So I don't know. I was listening to an audio book, so they gave the sources, but I couldn't really look it up. But that was a fairly astounding factoid. Number of income earners in your household. If you want to do the traditional thing, or some variant of where only if there's two in the relationship and only one works, yeah, that's going to change things. But if you're both working, then that changes things again. Or maybe you don't want to do that for your entire life, So anyway, it does make a difference. Now, some of these things are unknowns, Your life hasn't quite played out yet. And so a lot of that term paper is kind of a forecasting. And just guess. And just say, yeah, I think I'll probably get married at some point, or I will stay single, and just go with that. The thing about planning is, I used to fly, and man, people would go up flying, and especially in fighters, things came so fast, and if you didn't think this thing through, if you didn't have a plan, things went horribly, horribly wrong. If you had a plan, but everything completely changed, you were still modifying your old plan. You weren't starting from scratch. So we used to talk about helmet fires, where people's heads would basically explode, where they just seemed like they were mentally breaking down, because in a a 2-ship or a 4-ship of fighters, you can tell when somebody's starting to lose it, just becoming overwhelmed, and that's because they didn't have a plan. So the thing with the term paper is, you come up with a plan, you kind of think about everything, and then when it comes up in real life, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of remember thinking about this before, and this is what I need to do. And especially when you're a new hire at a company, because you come in there and you're trying to make a good impression on these people, but like day 1, day 2, the HR people, the human resource people, come in there and start throwing down all these different options for you in terms of, well, do you want this savings plan? Do you want this insurance? And if it's all brand new to you, you would have to literally study and read up on this stuff to figure out to make good choices. And because it's kind of a tense thing, since you're a new hire, you don't want to be the new guy and go, I'm not comfortable. I'm just not that bright. I haven't thought about this a lot. Can you slow things down? It's just much more impressive to have a familiarization with what you want in terms of life insurance when they give you options, health insurance, and all that stuff, and you'll be able to go, yep, this makes sense, I want this, I want that, and and oh, by the way, you just started this new job, and you can concentrate on your task at hand, the job they're asking you to do, rather than all this minutia and the HR stuff. So other facts, yeah, how big a family, your age, consumption behavior. So, yeah, I had a discussion with one of my daughters about this too. She said she needed something. I'm like, it sounds like you want something. Need versus wants. So, needs are definitely needs that are, your survival is semi-contingent upon it. Food, shelter, things like that. But whatever it was, a new dining room table, that falls more into the want situation. So this is how, they model it out in their classic world, but it's not always the case, And career-wise, it shows this linear progression. Yeah, sometimes people go, yeah, screw that, I'm done here. I'm going to, downsize and work for this other company, and my pay's going to go down. Or I've been smart, I've been investing all kinds of money, and now boom, this thing goes up, and screw that, I'm make more money in retirement than I did working. I mean, that could happen. You don't know. So, but in a traditional type, what they consider the normal progression, the retirement thing is kind of goofy because you don't know when this is going to end. I mean, ideally, you want to leave, you don't want an open casket. You want to have, your body wants to be completely worn out. You got every bit of life out of it. And you want the check to the funeral home to bounce, meaning you spent everything having fun or on your kids or whatever you wanted to do with it. But you don't know when that day is coming. So that's hard. That's why most people, if they can, will have a big lump sum, like say, $5 million that we talked about in that on those charts. That'd be a nice number to have. If you had $5 million, you can conservatively off that, man, you could, rake it in. Have 10% of $5 million is $500,000. That's a lot. go for 5%, be more conservative, 250 grand. Anyway, you can do quite well if you structure things well in life. So budget, I think we're familiar what a budget means. And useful or anticipating. Yep. You got a lot of different means now enabled by technology for budgeting. Most budgets, and to tell you the truth, I don't necessarily do budgeting for myself, but I do kind of a review. You have to go back over. I spend most of my money, any money I can that doesn't have a convenience fee, I put it on a credit card. I don't use cash hardly at all. And so when I review a credit card statement, I can see where my money went, and it's pretty apparent. And if I spent more than I wanted to, I can go, whoa, this added up pretty quickly. But the other advantage to doing it that way is, granted, it's in hindsight, but also I can go, wait a minute, I did not buy, a bunch of crap at some online retailer that whatever. So you can find the bogus charges. If you find the bogus charges 6 months from now, it's just not as good. The banks are not friendly, and they don't have to be. That's the whole problem. So if you catch it within a month, they will reimburse you. If you catch it within a number of days, you identify the fraud, they're just happy, and they're very eager to help you out because they haven't advanced the money to the merchant yet. So the fraud hasn't actually taken place. So their bitterness grows as time goes, and their bitterness is reflected in the chance that you might not get the money back if it exceeds the legal limits. So anyway, she did her budget, and then she went back and looked at the new numbers. Something happened here. So obviously, healthcare, unpredictable. Something broke on the car, so spent more than she wanted to. But again, if you have a sort of a slush fund, maybe we'll talk about this later. But one of the things I do is I have a normal checking account. In fact, I use a bank in Texas. I do not, for the most part. I have one bank up here that I use, but that's it. I've got a military bank that's very efficient to use because they do things quickly and over the phone, and they pay quicker, and they do all the rest of that. But then I've got brokerage accounts and different companies, but I guess my primary now is Fidelity. But there's a bunch of different companies you could use. But a brokerage account is, there's stocks and other things in there, but there's also a cash, a money market, a cash management account in there. And so it's not staring you in the face all the time. You don't see this extra $5,000 or $6,000 in your checking account, nor is it subject to fraud all the time. It's more difficult to move the money out of the brokerage, or at least it sets off more flags, and they send me a text if money changes out of that account and all that. So it's a little bit more secure. And so it'd be a perfect place, let's say, rather than 500, let's say the transmission goes, and we're looking at $3-4 grand or something like that. If you had that money, that emergency fund in your little slush fund there, you could pull it out of there, and then just with a simple transfer, and stay with your budget. You don't necessarily, your car's not going to break every month. So maybe your original 200 was good, and the 500 was just a one-time event, and no need to change things. The other option too is, this is why, I'm an advocate of responsible credit card use, because to get through life, and get the maximum value and everything else, you got to be able to have a credit card without abusing it. But anyway, if you have a credit card and you're doing what I'm saying, you're a convenience user, you have all this available, credit on it, meaning that you pay off the balance every month. So all that amount on there, whatever it is, 10, 20 grand, is available to you. When the car breaks, you put it on the credit card, and then you, pay off that credit card, and it just gives you a little bit more time to get that sorted out and then you can switch it around, and maybe over the next couple months, you take it from your slush fund, and then you build your slush fund back up with your little individual car expense account. However you want to do it, whatever works for you. That's the whole thing. It needs to be something that you'll do. If you have a budget and it's this really intricate thing. Another war story. When I was in the Air Force, there was a guy who, his wife would come in the door, and she would, basically he'd give her the wallet, and it's just the weirdest thing, and she would go through and write it all down, what was spent that day, and it's like, get a life. Not a lot of fun, but obviously something was driving that. So we talked about this. Budgets, shortages, predicted cash flow, adjustments. Yeah, it's a fluid document. And hopefully the numbers go up. So, yeah, I remember when I was growing up, my mom had this, that was called the holiday or the Christmas savings plan or something. We had a big family. My parents didn't make that much money, but, when it was Christmas, we all had good gifts because, she put over whatever, $100 or whatever, so there was, an extra $1,200 come Christmas time to spend on gifts. And it's funny when you pay yourself first, when you set that money aside and you don't see it in your checking account, the propensity for that money to be there, if you have extra money in your checking account and go, I'm going to save whatever's left, I'm going to invest whatever's left at the end of the month. Guess what? There's not going to be anything left at the end of the month because you're going to see it in there and you're going to whittle it down to nothing. We all have friends like that. I had a buddy of mine, I think he ended up as a general. But this guy, oh my God, he was fun to be around on payday. But the rest of the month he was, bumming money from you. And that was his life. Anyway, create an annual budget so yeah, you can extend it out. And here's what she's doing, even more review, looking at more months. So she's doing it old school with like some Excel spreadsheet or something like that. But this is so much easier with all the apps and all the rest of it. And it'll give you, certain areas. All these things are going to be kind of garbage in, garbage out. If you put in a bunch of useless data or it miscategorizes data, it's going to give you bad info. But anyway. So review, don't become overly dependent, create a budget, stay within it. Yeah, that's all on you. I don't know if that's necessarily ethical. Well, this will wear out your friends really quick. So here she's multiplied it out for the whole year. Boom. So they had an association here with Mint. And these people, these are kind of the devil right here. Intuit is part of the reason our tax system is so screwed up, so complex, so complicated, is because people make money off of it. I've got a tax lawyer that I pay $500 an hour to. When I get in a scrap with one of the IRS type folks, and you don't want to do that all the time, but my God, he's kind of incentivized to find problems. And Intuit, these are the guys who sell TurboTax. So, by God, they don't want you doing some flat tax, some simplified tax. Their business model is complexity. And look at all these things they got, So Intuit's the parent company. They got TurboTax, Credit Carbon, Mint, QuickBooks, MailChimp, the junk email people. Anyway, the deal with Mint is it's going to be great. It is going to be fantastic and easy and so useful and stuff. And they're soaking up all your data. And then you're going to start getting, hey, how about TurboTax? Oh, now that you've done all this budgeting, you can seamlessly integrate all this stuff with your TurboTax. So they want you as a customer directly. And then also you've identified yourself by your finances and the rest of it for, if you're a credit card company, if you're a mortgage company, a lender, you're going to be coming to Intuit and say, hey, can we buy that list, that data? and that's, they're going to be making the general thing, as you all know on the internet. If the service is free, you're the product. You are being sold, and you are quite valuable. College students especially, because you're young and you've got a potential to make a fair amount of money in your life, and your brand identity is not well established. So you get somebody like, say, a 50-year-old Budweiser drinker, and you're going to try and convert that guy to drinking Miller or Coors. That's probably not going to happen. You are throwing a lot of money against a person who is static and not changing. You do that if you're a beer company. You throw all that money at the college age crowd, and you get them to associate the good times they had in college with one particular beer, or in this case a financial service, and that's what they want. So even though you may not have much money now, they want to develop that brand loyalty, to go on. So in fairness, I posted this in here today too. NerdWallet, a different thing. Again, nobody's like some altruistic, benevolent, everybody wants to sell your data. But at least they had more apps. And so whatever you use, something may work better for you than another. It's like Google. I don't like Google, but man, their stuff works. So I use Google Maps. Even though the parent company, I use their web hosting just because I'm lazy and their stuff works. So if you're fine with probably some of your data, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm getting more value than they're taking, then do that. And these guys will obviously probably sell your data as well, unless they make some disclaimer. But even that, can you trust them? So, but yeah, all that stuff that we showed on those sheets of her coming up with all these columns, they'll do that. They'll think of things, and especially like when I was in real estate, people, well, I never did it, but other people had financial calculators and these little, the old school charts to figure out amortization. All that stuff's done on an app now, and the apps are better because the apps also remember when you're buying a house to calculate things like, insurance and taxes. And so with access to to these other internet databases, they can estimate your taxes and the rest of it. So the same thing's true with these budgeting apps. Because they specialize, they can offer methods and tools and graphs and all kinds of nifty stuff for you that is potentially worth something for you. Okay, so a balance sheet. This is on the first sheet, the cash flow, we kind of showed that we can buy the new car, although you shouldn't, but we can afford to buy this or that because we can cover the cash going in and out. Balance sheet is more longer term. You're looking at liabilities and assets. So liabilities, obviously, what you owe, and assets. Well, wait a minute, I'm reading the slide wrong. Assets, what you own, and then liabilities, what you owe. Net worth's the difference. So, and the balance sheet is your financial position. So, again, I'm like I say, I'm leaning way forward in the straps right now because I'm not confident that this nation's gonna get inflation under control anytime soon. So even though I bought a big chunk of property, I got a screaming deal as a farmer on a loan on it. So I'm taking that loan with the understanding that by the time I go to pay this 30-year loan back, the money's not going to be worth that much, and inflation is going to inflate the value of the property significantly. So it just makes sense. So again, you need to do things smartly. What I'm saying is my balance sheet would look, my liabilities would frankly scare most people. But when the assets or the security, the collateral behind these things is real estate, it's not nearly that troubling. to have a bunch of junk or you know, a bitchin' Camaro out front or something else that's, you know, not of any value once I drove it off the lot. That would be scary to have those kinds of liabilities. But to have property, real estate as a liability, you know, securing the liability is the loan, but the collateral is the land. So, balance sheet reflects your financial position at a specific point in time. Yep, a snapshot. So liquid assets, sold without a huge loss in value. Household assets, owned by a household such as a home, car, market value. People a lot of times will overestimate things like potentially furniture, cars, some stuff. Homes are fairly easy to, they can get appraised, but people say, oh, this is worth whatever amount, you know. When I was in the Middle East, people were always buying these, you know, beautiful Persian rugs and saying, oh, these are just a great investment. It's like, where are you going to sell this? You know, you're going to go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. People are buying used stuff there, and they're not paying a premium. Now, the boutiques, you know, they're getting big money. And so I had a friend who was a Turkish friend of mine, and he gave me a couple, 3 rugs when I was going back. I was flying in New Jersey, just ghastly. But anyway, I had to go to New Jersey, so I was trying to make the best of it. So I took these rugs into this dealer, and I said, hey, you know, I see you're selling these rugs for, I don't know, they were like $1,200 or $1,400 a piece. And the guy's like, yeah. And I said, well, I've got 3 here. What will you give me for them? He goes, I give you about $300 a piece. You know, because he has to maintain a store. He has to make money on this stuff. He has a huge inventory. And so in Turkey, I could buy those rugs for about $300 a piece, which is a great deal, but it's not a money-making investment. And then when I was in Afghanistan and other places like that, there's so much counterfeit, even the gold, but especially the gems. So not all assets are the same. So anyway, these bonds and stocks, now those are, you know, about as liquid as they, next to cash. Cash is the ultimate liquidity. But bonds, stocks, gold, things like that, they are very liquid. You can sell them, and the settle is about 3 days. I guess we're going to go into this real quick right here. So when you're looking at bonds and stocks, for those of you who don't know, bonds are essentially a loan. Big corporations or big municipalities, you know, cities, states, they don't go to banks generally to get loans. Banks, that's not necessarily the way they work. Banks at that point, at the higher level banks, what they do is they organize like bond sales and stuff. And so outside investors work, you know, to invest that money. They buy bonds. And say you buy a 20-year bond with a company. That means you gave them, say, 20 grand in this case, and just pulling random numbers, and they'll make bond payments to you at, say, you know, 5%. So they give you whatever, $1,000 a year on that bond until it reaches maturity, and then they give you your 20 grand back, and you're good. You don't own that company. You're just, it's a loan arrangement. A stock you buy actual shares of a company. You own a chunk of that company, and so it's a different type of, that's why they call them equities. And so it's a different type of setup. But anyway, you know, when you say I've got, you know, 100 shares of Tesla, that's very easy to calculate that value. I mean, it comes out, the market quotes come out, you know, every few seconds. So it's very easy to determine the value. There's no estimating going on there. Now, they can be fluid, they can be volatile, but oh well. Mutual funds, what happens is, let's say you're like, yeah, Tesla's kind of up and down. You know, you like Elon Musk, you don't like Elon Musk. You're not sure what's going to go on with Tesla compared to some of the other Chinese competitions. I think the whole sector is going to go up, so maybe I'll buy a mutual fund that is managed by, you know, a corporation, whatever, a firm that goes out for investors and buys individual shares of a bunch of different companies across the whole electric vehicle sector, and then repackages and sells them to you. And now you buy a mutual fund that's one focused on electric vehicles, and so now you've diversified your risk because you're now invested across that whole market. And so if Tesla goes up, that's probably going to help you because that's probably one of the companies they bought. But if one of the other companies surges, that's good for you too because you own a chunk of that. So it just provides you. We'll talk way more about this stuff later on. But and mutual funds can also hold bonds. They can hold all types of different assets, and they can do. It's not what I described there was a sector fund. It can be a technology fund. It can be all the technology. It can be, some sort of geographical type fund where it's a fund that concentrates for some reason on, Vietnam because you're thinking that's going to take off. And the issues of trying to invest directly in Vietnam you couldn't do it. You couldn't pull that one off. But you could find a mutual fund that invests in the Pacific Rim focusing on Vietnam. And you can buy that on a broker, and you can buy it right now. So, anyway, it's just a very easy way to get things done, and it provides a mutual fund manager, a fund manager who, provides a little bit more of a hands-off approach for you because you've got a professional who's being paid a percentage to manage that, and then real estate. So yeah, it can be. Now, your own home is kind of tricky because, it's great to see your home value go up, but, let's face it, you got to live somewhere. And it's not always great. I mean, I like having property, but I like having other properties in addition to my home, something that I might be able to, invest in and flip. If I'm just a single home guy, and let's say, I buy a home. I really want this $500,000 home, but all I can afford right now is this $250,000 home. So I buy the $250,000 home, and I'm all excited because the value has doubled. That home is now worth $500,000, and now I want to buy that, my dream home that used to cost $500,000. Now it costs $1 million. I was only $250,000 behind. Now I'm $500,000 behind. So it's not the best situation. But if it's rental property, income property, there's different ways to do that. And there's also ways to get involved in what they call REITs and some other, real estate investment trusts and things like that, where it's more like a mutual fund setup. You're not the guy out there dealing with tenants and toilets and all that other stuff. You're usually in commercial real estate or maybe, big apartment projects that are managed by somebody else. So you can get into real estate. I do like real estate as an investment, but we'll talk more about that as we go. Okay. In personal finance, anytime we say current or whatever, in finance, per the IRS, per just general industry conventions, anything less than a year is short term, okay, or current in this case. They can use those names interchangeably. And anything over a year is long term. So, if you own an asset, and it say goes up in value, you would get capital gains. And so, if it's held for over a year, you would pay the long term capital gains tax, which is basically about 15%. If you held it for less than a year, let's say you buy some crypto and you sell it in a week. Well, because you sold it within less than a year, it just is calculated at your regular income level. So let's say you're in a tax bracket, which we'll talk more about, but the tax bracket is going to be generally higher than 15%. It's probably going to be, 28, whatever, 30, depending on where you're at. And so you have to keep track of that kind of stuff. It'll be kept track of by the firm that you're buying the investments through. But anyway, so we're talking about a lot of broad subjects here. I don't mean to confuse things, but in order to explain any of this stuff, you kind of got to go into the depth in certain things. Net worth, difference between what you have and what you owe. We did that. Creating that balance sheet. Yep. So here's what she's got in terms of assets. $1,000 car. So she's not exactly, she's got $3,000 in stocks. She's actually financially, she's leaning forward pretty well. That's not bad. Credit card balance, maybe, she pays it off every month, but you don't want that continuing. Yep. So something happened. She purchased a new car. So the assets went up, but the liabilities are going to go up as well, obviously, unless you pay cash for it, but she's not showing that much cash. So anyway. So again, the smarter thing would be perhaps not to buy the brand new car, or do something. It's because it's just a. But I mean, I guess she's not going nuts. 20 grand on a new car. I don't know which kind of car you get for that. Impact of the economy, things outside of our control. This is kind of a scary subject. Well, I'll talk more about it later. I don't want to get political, but if certain things happen, the wheels will definitely come off the bus with the U.S. economy, but we'll see. Impact of the economy, personal balance sheet. So, yeah. Everything's supply and demand. So I guess I'll kind of go into it right now because it's not going to happen. It's just a theoretical thing. They've talked about, there's a concept called capital gains. Like, let's say you have a house, and you in our previous thing, you bought it for $250,000 and you sell it for $500,000. You made $250,000, and so that is a capital gain. And so you would pay taxes on that. Now, real estate is kind of cool because if you've owned it and lived it in 3 out of the past 5 years, you actually don't have to pay capital gains, which says a lot about the power of the real estate lobby. Let's switch our example to stocks. You bought $250,000 worth of stock, it appreciated up to $500,000. You will pay, $250,000 in capital gains. So what they're talking about currently in politics, if you've heard this discussion, they've talked about wanting to tax unrealized capital gains. So what they would do, and my God, the math, and it would just be a daunting task. There's really no foreseeable way they could pull this off. But what they would have to do would, I guess, appraise everybody's home and go, okay, that home's worth $500,000, so you only pay $250,000. We're not going to wait on collecting the tax when you sell it. We're going to collect tax on unrealized, meaning you haven't gotten that money yet, capital gains. So, yeah, you didn't sell your house, you didn't do anything, but you owe us tax on $250,000 worth of income. And in the stock market, it's even worse. They'd say, okay, your stock, you bought it for $250, it's worth $500 now. We want the tax on that unrealized capital gains. Now, the first problem is, wait a minute, maybe the market's just up right now. What if the market plummets? Are you going to pay me back? I mean, the math problem being generated here is cumbersome. But not unrealistic, because if they come to somebody who's got $500,000 in stock and they say, you got to pay taxes on this, well, you got to sell some of that stock to pay the taxes. And so's the other guy and the other guy and the other guy. So when you all go to the market to sell the stock, supply and demand, baby, you're going to get slaughtered. The prices on the market are going to fall. The housing market will crumble. So not that this is going to happen, but when they talk about taxing unrealized capital gains, that is the, devastation that, oh, literally, I'm not trying to get apocalyptic, but it pretty much would require a full scale world war, nuclear war, to get the country out of the funk that the peril that we would be in. You would need some sort of game changing event to re-wicker the world to overcome a fatal error like that. Enough said. Okay, how cash flows affect personal balance sheets. So, yep. Wealth is built using net cash flows. So, more money coming in, then less liabilities. Yep. 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 So, the assets can increase, the underlying assets. And so, when they increase rapidly, that's called volatility. High volatility to be more precise. Volatility just means the movement. So you can have low volatility, high volatility. Typically, for most investments, especially investments you're involved in when you're younger, they tend to be higher volatility because they tend to go up faster. And anyway, you have more time to recover over the time in the market. And I'll show you some charts to kind of explain that. So, just a slide to kind of show you what we've been talking about. Liquidity ratio. Sometimes these ratios are useful, sometimes they're not. Not a bad thing here. But if they're asking what a liquidity ratio is, that's what they're talking about. Just dividing the liquid assets by the short-term liabilities, current liabilities. Debt level. Yep. So again, there's external factors sometimes, and not all debt is the same. So, if I've got a buttload of real estate debt, hey, I'm not scared. If I've got a ton of credit card debt, I'm an idiot. I'm dying here. So anyway, this doesn't take that into account. And a savings rate. Sometimes they'll quote these numbers. Okay, so that was semi-involved, but time value concepts, we're going to blow right through this chapter because they can't really explain this chapter as well as those graphs did, those Excel spreadsheets that I provided to you last week. They're going to talk about how, value is influenced. They're going to talk about, sooner you get the money, the more money you can make off it, right? Because you're going to invest it and you're going to start earning interest. And they're going to try to impress you on how that compounding can really grow. And then they're going to use a term like an annuity. Annuity is a broad word that just means a series of cash flow payments. So a lot of times they'll use this in like a real estate, or not a real estate, an insurance type thing, because it's kind of the opposite of insurance. Insurance, you need to die. Life insurance, you need to die to get paid off. With an annuity, say you give a company, the deal is that you give them 10 grand and they start paying you $100 a month forever. Well, that forever is the length of your natural life. So if you die next week, not a great deal. If you live another 60 years, it'd probably work for you. So annuities are not that common, but they're and they have to be sold by a insurance agent, which is kind of a drag because that brings in a commission. Because they have to explain it to you, it has to be legally done, but it's just unfortunate because it's that drag, friction on your initial investment. Compounding, we're familiar with this. Interest on interest, and the amount of money you deposit today. Yep, number of years. So now they're going to try and impress you with some formulas and stuff, and it's just not that important. This is not really used that much in industry. Everybody's got a calculator. They want more information. So we're not trying to make this into a math class. You won't have to do a bunch of formulas and memorize a bunch of stuff. You need to be able to, understand this stuff. In the military, they had a concept. You get this black box that would take certain signals and would put out other. They talked about it as PFM. Pure effing magic, because you didn't really know what happened. Finances should not be like that. If you can't understand how it's calculated, then or just now. Again, what I said about compound interest in the long term, it's really difficult to understand, because you just conceptually, our little brains just can't keep up with the fact of, wow, $500 a month, and all of a sudden I get 5.3 million. It's just that exponential growth doesn't we don't easily grasp those concepts. But you should, with a little study, figure it out, and you'll. In the real world, you use a little app or a calculator, just like I was talking about for calculating a mortgage. So future value of a single dollar amount. So what they're talking about here is you put down one chunk of money just once, and then you want to know what it's going to be worth, in the future. So PV, present value, yeah, $5,000, 4%. How much is that going to go? Look on a table. No, we don't need to look on a table. All we need to do is, type in your preferred search engine, future value of a single dollar or something like that to that effect, and you're going to find a nifty calculator that's going to be useful if you had to do this type of work. Usually these applications are more contextual, where it'll be, oh, you need to save up for a down payment. If you have this amount of money right now and you put it at this interest rate, how long will it take to get your down payment? And they're kind of saying the same thing here. They're looking at the future value of that money you put up front. And so, but again, they want to get into N's and I's. And I mean, it's not that difficult. N's normally going to be periods, interest, payments, computed future value. Yeah, whatever. Don't be wrapped up with all that. And whatever method on the homework, whatever method you're fine with, use that to calculate your answer, to include, an internet type app, mobile app, whatever. Impact of the longer term. So this is where things get crazy, where things just, because of this compounding, where you're earning interest on interest, it just goes astronomically higher. Impact of interest rate? Well, obviously, the higher the rate, the better it goes. There is a kind of a hip pocket thing. It's called the rule of 72. Kind of neat. What you need to know with that is whatever interest rate they're paying you. Let's say, how long will it take for my money to double? Well, if you know the rule of 72, and then this is just like a very specific, one-time kind of calculator that you can do in your head, you can figure out how long it'll take your money to double. So, if somebody's stupid enough to pay you 72% interest, let's say they're paying you 72% interest, and they're going to pay that over the course of a year, how long would that take? Boom. You just multiply that in there. 1 year. Not the best example. Let's go with something better. Let's go with 10%. 10% interest. Wow, how long will it take my money to double? I divide 10 into 72. Oh, 7.2 years. What if I'm getting only 5%? 5 goes into 72, whatever times that is, whatever. And so you know that answer, and I could calculate in my head if I wasn't the end of the day. Okay, so now they're going to impress you with these graphs, how it goes up and up and up. More impressive, I think, is the longer term, because you guys, most of you, you're going to have this money out there working for 20, 30 years, hopefully, and, it's just going to skyrocket. Keep in mind, what goes up also goes down. If you are a bad person, bad, that's probably a little too broad, but if you're not financially disciplined and you're keeping that credit card balance, your silly little debt, your $1,000 debt, because you didn't pay it off at 10%, and guess what? Credit cards are charging twice that. So this would have been whatever, $5,000-6,000 that you had to pay for your $1,000 worth of enjoyment way back when. So not a good deal. Interest rates work, both for you and against you. Power of compounding. Yep. Interest on interest. Yeah. Again, the reason we can't understand how much something's worth in the future when it's compounding, we also fail to grasp how small, foolish little debts that we don't pay off can grow like they do. Discounting, okay, not a very common process. Sometimes, well, they're using it. There's a way to use discounting where you're paying points. You can buy down a mortgage. That's not really what they're talking here. They're using this term discounting in terms of a present value. So, again, don't get too wrapped up. Their grammar and everything is correct, but it's just they're making a fairly simple concept more complex than it needs to be. Present value. Tell the amount of money you must invest today to have some future amount. So, you're going to need 20 grand for this down payment 5 years from now. How much do I need to put away right now? Will 3 grand do it? Will 5 grand do it? How long is it going to be? And what interest am I going to get? So that's what they're saying right here. Interest rate, the number of years. So, again, they want to, jazz it up. Can also be used on a calculator, so they're finally fessing up. But a calculator, purpose-driven calculators, I don't even know I guess you can buy those, but I haven't seen them lately. So this person wants 50 grand 5 years from now. What chunk of money do they need to have today? And they're going to get 7% annually. So what's the amount they need to invest? So, you can kind of take a guess. These numbers are not that extreme. 5 years, 50 grand, 7%. 7%, 0.72, 10 years. Yeah. Anyway, it comes out to be $35,000. So again, you have to kind of use the, understand stuff enough so that you can go, if it says $3,500, not only did you do the problem wrong, but you didn't have that common sense to go, wait a minute, $3,500 is not going to change into 50 grand over 5 years and only 7%. You knew it was going to be, somewhere above 20 and certainly less than 50, whatever. And so there's the right answer. How you come up with that answer, there's a variety of ways to solve that problem. And again, you can find a calculator you can use tables, charts in the book, whatever you want to do. Future value of an annuity. So annuity is rather than we're doing this one single payment thing that we did on the previous ones, now we're doing a series. So, future value of annuity. I'm going to put down $1,000 every year for the next whatever number of years. Annuity as an annual in this case. And, how much is that going to get me? So, timelines, values, yep. Future value, interest, periods. So they won the lottery. We'll see $150,000 every year for the next 20 years. Invest them at 7%. How much will be in your account? Do not make any withdrawals. So that's an annuity. Wow, $6 million. What they don't tell you is what's inflation right now. And again, don't be conned here. There's nobody wants to overstate the inflation rate. The government, number one, they've got a ton of debt that they finance. They have to pay, T-bills and other different things. They have to pay their investors for a rate that's indexed to inflation. So they don't want to overstate inflation, not by a penny. They want it lower. Plus all their Social Security, their retirement, military benefits, all those other benefits are also indexed to inflation. So, what's the real inflation rate? It's more than a couple, 3%, that's for sure. You see it in the stores. So my point is, that if you're making 7% on your money, and we've had inflation rates that high, if not much higher. You hear some people saying that the hurdle rate is 14%. I don't know that it's that high, but it's not nothing. And so, what will you be able to buy with this $6 million? About $3 million worth of stuff, maybe. So it's not all gravy. Present value of annuity. So now you're going to work it backwards. Again, kind of a lottery problem. I'm not sure where this would be something that you're going to be using that commonly. But anyway, if they'll, we'll give you this money, it could be a lottery thing. We'll pay you this much in the future, or if you want it now, and you can do the math and figure it out. I don't know. I haven't won too many lotteries. Yeah, go figure. They use the lottery example. 82,000 at the end of the year, every year for the next 25 years. Financial firm, okay, it's a financial firm, probably run by professionals who might know what they're doing. So they're going to give you 700 grand. You go, wow, that's a lot. I could buy a lot of, you're already kind of have shown yourself as not maybe a strong swimmer in the financial pool when you're buying lottery tickets. But anyway, you did that, and so now they're going to offer you something. Now, again, if they're offering it to you without any negotiation, they're not in this for their health. So they're probably, going to lowball a little. But in this case, no, they were screwing you just a little bit. But maybe you're, in your 70s. It's like, screw the grandkids. I want that money now. I'm going to Vegas, or I'm doing whatever. So there might be life situations that might drive you to, but at least now you can make, unlike your lottery buying decision, you're now making educated decisions on your finances. Value to estimate savings. Yep. How time value money, and it's addictive. I mean, once you become a saver, sometimes you can get this to the extreme. I argue with my daughter sometimes. That's kind of where I've arrived. I mean, I've got a lot of property, and it's like, whatever. My newest car is a not so nice. So whatever. I mean, I'm not that frugal, but I don't really like nice cars or new cars. I like nice cars, but in Alaska, I used to have a Dodge Viper, as a matter of fact, and I had a Corvette, but I totaled that out just not too long ago. Actually, it's been a year now. But anyway, I do appreciate nice cars and airplanes and stuff like that. But in my current situation, I've got dogs chewing things off of vehicles and pigs ripping wires off of trailers, and they don't let me have nice things. So anyway, how financial savings fits within your plans. Yep. So some personal questions that might come up in your term plan. Okay, and then the homework. So again, don't, this homework, I'm not saying wait till the last minute and do it as a huge batch assignment, but on the other side, don't panic because you're like, oh, I can't find this and it doesn't match up exactly. I'll put out samples of the questions here shortly. I'm actually waiting for the publisher supposed to send me a new hard copy of the book, so I was going to go back through and kind of tweak all the questions to make sure you can find them. But we'll work that out. I'll have samples of the lead-ins to the questions, so you'll be pointed in the right direction. And then you'll have 2 videos to watch this week since I screwed up and didn't put the other one. Good luck.